After covering the data sync in previous chapter, we are going to deep dive into the Dataflow editor. The Dataflow editor is the heavy tool for doing more stuff on the data layer. It's not complex, but it does require some skill sets in the data itself. Before going into the Dataflow editor, let's one more time just cover the whole data landscape that we have in Einstein Analytics. In this diagram, you can see all the ways we can bring the data sets into Einstein Analytics. If we start on the top, that is your trend report data and analytics. That is the capability to run a user report in Salesforce, and if I had the permission to trend data and analytics, I will see a green button on the report that allows me to schedule the trending daily, weekly, or monthly, and directly push the results of that report into a data set, in this case, the orange color. This will not be in the data flow, but of course, it should show in the data monitor job because it is registering a data set directly. Now, the other data sets created are through sync or connect. So when you enable connect and when you create through dataset builder some data sets and you run them in the data flow, they are going to go and bring these synced objects, and they will be in this layer right here in the purple, and these would be my synced or connected data sets. Of course, I can also connect to other sources, whatever we can connect through the connectors that we provide in Einstein Analytics. Again, Dataset Builders is going to combine some of these objects. So as you imagine, this is opportunities, this is account, this is user. It's going to combine these three into a blue data set. In our day, for example, previous exercises, we called it MyOpsDS. A CSV is directly pushed into a green data set. And ETL tools or APIs that you build can push and create data sets in EA environment, and we present them here on this graph with the gray color. Now, once the data sets are created and they land in EA, we also have the advantage of, one, using recipes like we did previously to combine, for example, the MyOps data, which was blue, and the CSV, the green, into a new light green data set. That was the one we called Op Owner Account. We can also use the data flow to do similar transformations, but with more capabilities, and sometimes even without the need to create a new data set. And this is what we are going to cover in the next few slides, the data flow editor mainly. One more reminder, as you can see that we have the sync here. This is scheduled. You have the data flow, another schedule, and you have the recipes, another schedule. Keep that in mind as you schedule all these together. So the data flow editor has more transformations. If you look under Data Manager, you are going to see the tab Data Flows and Recipes. You are going to see all the data flows listed here. You will have default Salesforce data flow. Every app installed, like Sales app or Service app or Templated app, will have its data flow too. And then the other ones that you create and you are using for your own purposes. When you click on the data flow to edit it, you are going to get this interface in the bottom right of the screen. We are going to cover the transformations, but just keep in mind that this is what you are going to use to add nodes, transformations, create fields, use the powerful compute expression or compute relative, and do also the flatten and add filter nodes, etc. With sync enabled, you can run multiple data flows. And by run, I mean create and run. So you have the option to create multiple data flows. And when you are creating a data set, this is where it lets you allows you to specify where the data set is going to sit in which data flow. Keep an eye on the release as we get closer to the releases. Specifically, for example, Spring 19, this will be up to a higher number. So we are going to cover a compute expression exercise, the simplest form of creating derived fields. Before going through the exercise, let me walk you through the slides. So we are going to go and create a compute expression that's going to create 3 fields. One is the custom stage order that we already did in other ways. And don't forget, this is the URL again for the files to download. We are going to need to copy paste some of these statements. We are also going to create opportunity age. It's a number of days, how long the opportunity has been open, for example. And just as a time stamp or a date stamp on the data flow. So every record will have the now, when it was run. So maybe I can just drag and drop it on the dashboard and say the data is fresh as of. So let's go to our environment. Go back to Data Manager. Again, if you don't have it open, it's from Analytics Studio. The gear icon, Data Manager, will open the tab. We are going to go to Data Flows and Recipes. And in the first day, or the first chapter, we created the default Salesforce data flow was used to create the data sets that we have been using in this series. So let's click on default Salesforce data flow. And since these are dev environments, Trailheads, they already have some other instructions. That's why when we ran them, we were able to see other data sets. So these are the already available instructions in the data flow. But if you grab the canvas, or you can actually search for it, so either one, you can drag the canvas down a little bit, or in production, if you have a lot of nodes, you can just search for the node. For example, we call it My Ops, so it's register My Ops DS, and it will zoom and focus on it. This is mainly what we are going to use for the exercise. We are going to come to these 2 nodes and add the compute expression. But before we start, let's go over the different transformations and walk you a little bit through some of the examples. If you look at the top left of the screen here, says the dataset builder. The dataset builder is the same one when we hit create dataset and selected local Salesforce. So it gives us that familiar UI with the blue nodes to create the dataset. The second one here is an SFDC digest. Now, SFDC digest is simply a node, like this purple node, where it goes and reads from the object we are asking the data from. So again, when we created the dataset builder, for example, let me just show you as a test. If I say, give me opportunity, and give me just account, and then I select some fields, and if I hit, so notice these are 2 nodes, calling opportunity and augmenting to account, adding account. So if I hit next, I am going to see not 2 blue nodes, but 4 purple nodes, because the first one, calling opportunity, SFDC digest opportunity, the second one calling account, then augmenting both together, and then registering, because I do need a register, else everything else is just up in the memory. So every time we seek the 2 blue nodes, or say, bring me opportunity, these fields, and accounts, then I get an SFDC digest account, SFDC digest opportunity, augment opportunity, and then register the result. So I'm going to not save this, just hit it back, and back to our exercise. Now, this node also is digest. Similarly, this is used, but for the connected objects, not the local ones. I might argue and say the most common 2 ones used are SFDC digest and the EdgeMart. EdgeMart is load a data set. So for example, when we saw the diagram with the orange and the green, these were created outside the data flow. What happened if I want to call them or do something with them in the data flow? So I'd use EdgeMart. Then we have the append. This is something similar like in the recipe. So just append 2 data sets, put them under each other. We have the augment. We are going to talk about this, but again, essentially adding from account to opportunity, or the other way around, from opportunity look up into account. So opportunity is the right and account is the left. If I click here, I'm going to see the left is opportunity. What is the key? the relationship. This is why all the fields were account ID.industry, account ID.type. We could actually change it from here. The dot will stay, but you can change the word. Right source account, right key IDs, right fields, etc. Then we have the compute expression, and we're going to have the exercise on that, but essentially it's a powerful way to create derived fields. We have the compute relative, also another way to create derived fields. Compute relative acts across rows, so up and down the rows. F of x or compute expression is only on one record. We have dimension to measure if you need to change a field that was created as a dimension to measure. Then the flatten, we will talk about flatten later. It's very powerful to flatten hierarchies. We have the filter node to add it. We have the slice data set to drop some of the fields. If you remember, we had 16 fields at the end. We had 10 opportunities, 4 account and 2 users. If for some reason I don't want the 16, I can add a slice and drop some of those and then register the rest. We have update. We look at one place, one ID, one value, look another place, another data set, the same ID, maybe we want to change the value, and then register to again save our results in a data set. This is for exporting data sets to Einstein. This is again when the two products were not together. Now that Einstein Discovery is part of EA as an EA plus, this is not needed. So back to our exercise. We wanted to add few fields. So what we are going to do is interject again here, add the node here to add the fields, and then register my ops.ts. So we are adding them as this data set is being created. Now, tip, because once I hit compute expression, it's going to bring a pop-up window. You do want to remember what is this node name exactly. Arguably, you could add it here or here, but let's assume it's just right here before it gets registered. Of course, depending on if the added fields are dependent on user or account or not. All right, so we're going to, let me move this just a little, hit compute expression, and say adding derived fields. The source, this is the one I told you need to remember. It's called augment user. Merge with source. So as I added somewhere here, my way, I'm getting 16 fields. I'm going to create 3. Do I want the 3 with the 16 and get 19? Then I check merge with source. If not, I just want to move with the new ones, then I uncheck merge with source. All right, let's add the first field. We call this custom stage order. I'm going to say in df because we already created this before in the recipe. And it's going to be a text. And for that, again, if you have a JSON editor or you go JSON editor online, you will open the file called advanced exercises syntax file. So this is the file we need. Advanced exercises syntax file. You can close this red. I'm going to zoom in. So the first exercise, custom stage order, line 8, all of that. Now again, this is the familiar case statement. Case when stage name is qualification, then 1 dot when stage name equal needs analysis, then 2 dot, and so on. So let's copy this. And if someone might be thinking, how do I test this from a syntax-wise? Because if I paste this, this is cycle expression, and there's no syntax check, we will later on say that this is where we recommend to go to the cycle editor, paste this or create it there, run it, and it looks fine, it runs fine. You can copy, paste it, save it to put it here. All right, since this is a text, we don't have to fill precision necessarily, and default value is not needed because we have else 7 other, but just as a best practice, just leave it for now so you remember or remind yourselves that you need default value. But again, in this case, it's not needed. Then I'm going to hit save. This is the first field. Next field is the op age. And this is numeric because it's number of days. Again, go to the file, should be op age, and this line 13. Paste the cycle expression. And let's walk through this a little bit actually. So if you look at the case statement, it's case when stage name is closed won or closed lost. Okay, that means it's closed. Then days between toDate sec epoch and toDate created date sec epoch. Now I'm leaving you with this so that these are syntaxes that work if you happen to be working with dates and days between. One of them is using the sec epoch, which is a number, and you can deduce what is the date from that. Just the engine understands it. Or you can use days between, for example, now, which is current day, and then toDate created date. But then the format you need to specify here is exactly the format of the created date, the field itself. So keep that in mind, because closed date will have something else. It might be just YYMMDD without a timestamp, for example. Because this is a number, a numeric, we have to specify precision and scale. Precision, think about it just as if it's equivalent to the number of characters or digits you want to give the number. This will never be more than 1 million, for example, or 100,000 or 900,000. Scale is the number of digits or characters after the decimal. Again, I don't want to use decimals, full days. And then default value, we can use, just put 0. All right, the last field is simply, let's say date stamp, and this is going to be a date, and we can use now. And again, for date, you have to specify the date format, like we did for numeric, because if you don't, you are going to get the Dataflow error only when you run it. So there's no necessarily check right here, but let's check the date format, for example, something that works. Where did I get this from? I checked the cycle guide, for example, or the data integration guide, one of those two. For the acceptable date formats, I'm going to leave everything else the same. I'm going to hit save and create. Notice this is the new node, got added right here. Now you have two options to bring it back to the flow. Now the easy one, the UI one, is just, but be very careful because the recycle bin, the delete button of this node is right here. But you can drag this arrow right here, you can drag and drop it. It saves you time if you're dealing with lots of nodes on the Dataflow. Or you could have just clicked on the register and resourced it back to this new node. Now that it's done, I can hit update Dataflow. Notice, again, I did not create a new data set for my transformations. I just put it right here in the Dataflow. And then you can hit run Dataflow. It's always recommended to run it with small changes. So in case if you have any errors, you can go check them out before waiting for a long period of time. So I'm going to leave this, let it run, and go back to the next exercise. Now that we have covered compute expression, let's go and take a look at compute relative. So compute expression, again, works on the same row. So for example, with checking case country is Canada, then this, or combination of conditions, or just simply adding a flag, for example. Compute relative goes up and down. So you can go and check the first of a row, the current, the previous, the next. If you recall, sliding window in compare table had more options. It can go -0, -1, -2, -3, -4, so on, or +1, +2, +3, +4. So compute relative is still powerful because we are creating it at the data level, so we are going to get the columns right there in the data set. A common use case is create fields that tell me the previous stage, the previous status, the previous amount, or what changed, did it go up or did it go down, for example. In this exercise, we are going to do just that. We are going to create a node that gives me the previous stage, that gives me the previous amount, or the change from previous amount, or the percentage, and how did that change? Did it go up or did it go down? For this exercise, we do need for a new data set, and we are going to upload it in a bit. And then we are going to create a different data flow just to focus on this compute relative in that data flow. We are going to walk you through the exercises, the steps to create the fields, including the previous stage, the change status, which is a cycle expression, case when current amount is less or greater than previous amount, then it's up or it's down or no change. And then the amount change percent. So let's go to the environment, and I want to create the data set from here for simplicity. So I click create data set. It's a CSV file. Upload that file. That file is called Advanced Campfire Snapshots CSV. Hit next. You can keep it the same name, private app, no problem. Then hit next. And again, it's just a bunch of records, actually 5 or 6 per month, and they repeat over 3 or 4 months. So I have a snapshot of my first opportunity, that stage on that month, what was the amount, and then again the second month I take that same snapshot, same opportunity, what was the stage, was it the same or not, and what was the amount. So let's hit upload file, leave it here. Now, as you noticed, that file had the opportunities per month. So we had first month, 5 opportunities, second month, 5 opportunities, and so on. Now, before we use compute relative, or while we're using compute relative, we need to reorder the records so we are able to read correctly what is the previous, what is the current, what is the next, etc. So I'm going to let the data set get created. I'll go to my data manager, meanwhile, and go create a data flow. Let's call this advanced DF exercises. Hit create. Now what I'm going to do is, first, this data set that I'm going to use was uploaded or created as a CSV. So it's not in any data flow. So to use it or to do something with it, I need EdgeMart. So I'm going to hit EdgeMart, load, advanced CSV. And right here it was created, advanced campfire snapshots. Create. So this is my node, EdgeMart, that dataset. Now I want to add compute relative. I clicked on it, but let's add compute relative. So add previous fields, for example. The source, there's only one source, one node, other node on this data flow right now, load. This is where I go back to ordering the records the way I want. Now, I want to know for each opportunity, what is the previous stage for that opportunity, for example. So my partition, my grouping, my ordering, specifically my partition, will be by op name. Because I want to order the records in a way that I can read again the previous, what was the previous to that record. The order by, since I'm going by timeline here, I want to order by snapshot, date, and ascending. So why I'm doing opportunity name, snapshot date, ascending, to give you an idea, a visual idea, if you take a look at this spreadsheet, what I'm trying to do is reorder the records so that O1 is like this, O1, O1, so this is partitioned by O1, all of the O1s are together, all of the O2s and so on. The dates are ascending, the first month, second, third, and fourth, so that the stages and the amounts are correctly ordered. Because now if I go and create this new field called previous stage, for example, well, for this record, what is the previous stage? There's nothing. So this will be null, or whatever I replace it, or NA, we are going to use actually NA. So either null if you don't put a default value, or it's NA, which is our default value in the exercise. Now for this record, what is the previous stage? It's still Q. So I write Q. And then for this record, it's the same opportunity, but what was the previous stage? It was Q. So now this is Q. And for this one, it's N, and so on. These are the fields I am creating, or I will be creating through the compute relative. All right, back to the exercise. Compute relative, I partitioned by name, I ordered by snapshot date, ascending. All right, let's add the field. First field is previous stage. Now the expression type here is a source field because I am looking at a specific field. If you remember from the spreadsheet, I'm just taking a look at what was this field before. There's no expression. I'm directly looking at that field. So I keep it source field, and the source field is stage. And the offset function is, like I mentioned, it's either current, first, next, or previous. I'm just looking at the previous. Default value, this is where the null and A. Again, previous, for this record, for example, the previous is Q, the current is N, the next is C, and the first in this partition and this order is Q. Now that I've created this first field, I hit save. This is my first previous stage. Now the second field is change status. Now in this case, it's a little bit more of just looking at the field. It is an expression. So I'm going to select cycle, and the expression, go back to our file. If you scroll down, change from previous, change status, it's a case statement. Again, simply case when current amount is greater than previous, then up. If not, less than previous, down, and no change. And you can actually, again, like we mentioned this before, you can go and search for icons. If you are, or you want to add icons, you can say and you can actually copy and paste it directly in the syntax. Now I'm not going to do down and no change, but just to show you that you can do this. So control copy, go back and put it in the cycle expression. The type is a text. Again, not necessarily scale. Default value is no change because it already has else no change, so we don't need default value in this case. Hit save. Now we add one more field. I believe this is change %. And again, it's a cycle expression, simply just to show you can calculate numbers, current amount minus previous amount divided by previous amount star 100. Again, cycle expression. We are creating a numeric. Give it a scale, maybe 2 decimals if you want to keep them. Or since it's a percentage, you can just say 0. Default value. We don't have a default value here, and I don't want null. I don't want that dash, so let's put a 0, specifically for the records that don't have anything previous. So let's hit save. Now that I have my 3 fields, I can hit create, and there you go, that's my compute relative. All right, what I need now is a register, because I did add the fields, but there's no register data set, so I do need to add a register. So register, this is just the node name, register final data set, for example. Source node is the adding. Alias, you can just use final, for example. Hit create, and now I have my final result. I'm going to update Dataflow, run the Dataflow, and make sure that it runs successfully before we go into the next exercise. We are going to take a look at those data sets later on, but again, if you run the Dataflow, just go make sure it runs, it ends, go back to your Analytics Studio, refresh, and take a look at those added fields to this CSV file.